Admiral Jiho Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars. The year was 2847, and humans had spread across 17 different star systems. They called themselves the Terran Federation, and Jiho was proud to serve as their leader. But today, something felt wrong. "Sir, we're getting reports from the outer colonies," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Yuna Huang. She looked worried. "3 more systems have gone silent in the past week." Jiho frowned. This had been happening for months now. Star systems would simply stop talking to them. No distress calls, no emergency signals, nothing. They would just go quiet like someone had turned off a radio. "Which systems this time?" Jiho asked. "Kepler 438, Gliese 667, and Wolf 1061, Yuna replied. "That makes 12 systems total that have gone dark. 12 systems, millions of people, different alien races, all living their lives one day and then silence." Jiho had sent investigation teams to the first few systems that went quiet, but those teams never came back either. Down in the science labs, Dr. Sohee Choi was studying star maps and trying to figure out what was happening. She had been humanity's top alien life expert for 20 years. She knew every major species in the galaxy, and she understood how they lived and worked together. Sohee looked at the patterns on her computer screen. The silent systems weren't random. They formed a clear line moving toward the center of the galaxy, moving toward human space, moving toward Earth. "It's like something is eating the galaxy from the outside in," she said to her assistant, Dr. Min Seok-yoon. "But what could do this? What could make entire civilizations just disappear?" Min-seok shook his head. "Maybe they're all running from something. Maybe they packed up and left." "No," Sohee said firmly. "I've studied these species. The Vorthak don't run. The Delphinians couldn't survive long space travel. And the Centaurans. They've lived in their system for over 10,000 years. They would never just leave." For 300 years, humans had been known throughout the galaxy as the Helpers. When the blue-skinned Delphinians were dying because their star was getting too hot, human engineers like Mina Park had worked day and night to build special shields around their planets. The shields reflected the dangerous light and saved their entire race. When the crystal-like Vorthak people were captured and forced to work as slaves by a cruel empire called the Hegemony, human diplomat Taiwan Lee had spent 5 years negotiating their freedom. He had given up his own comfort and safety to make sure every single Vorthak could go home. This was how humans worked. They didn't leave people behind. They didn't let others suffer if they could help it. Other species in the galaxy had learned to trust humans because humans always tried to do the right thing. But now, something was coming that made entire civilizations vanish without a trace. Captain Wonho Seo was preparing his battle fleet near the edge of human space. He commanded the battlecruiser Indomitable and 12 other warships. They were humanity's best fighters with the most advanced weapons and shields. "Sir, we're approaching the Centauran system," reported his navigation officer. "Should be seeing their cities and space stations soon." Wonho nodded. The Centaurans were a peaceful people who lived on 3 different planets. They had beautiful floating cities and were known for their music. Their songs could be heard across space radio for light years in every direction. But as his ships came out of hyperspace, Wonho saw something that made his blood run cold. Nothing. The system was completely empty. No cities, no space stations, no ships. Even the planets looked different, like they had been scrubbed clean. There were no lights, no radio signals, no signs that anyone had ever lived there. "This is impossible," whispered his science officer, Lieutenant Mina Park. "The Centaurans had over 2 billion people living here. Where did they go?" Wonho ordered his ships to scan everything. They found no bodies, no wreckage, no trace that a civilization had ever existed in this system. It was as if someone had taken a giant eraser and wiped away every sign of life. Back on Earth, President Jiwon Kang was meeting with the Federation Council. Representatives from dozens of different worlds and species had gathered to discuss the growing crisis. "We need to face the truth," said Ambassador Kyung Nam, a human who had spent years working with alien governments. "Something is systematically removing civilizations from the galaxy, and it's moving toward us." The alien representatives were scared. The tall, thin ethereals whispered among themselves in their musical language. The rock-like granites clicked their stone fingers nervously. Even the proud warrior race called the Apex looked worried. "What do humans plan to do?" asked the ethereal ambassador, her voice like wind chimes. President Kang stood up. "What we've always done. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We stand together, and we never, ever give up." But privately, she was terrified. What could make entire civilizations disappear? What kind of enemy were they facing? And most importantly, how could humanity fight something they didn't understand? Dr. Sohee Choi continued her research through the night. She studied every bit of information they had about the silent systems. She looked at old communications, trade records, anything that might give her a clue. Then she found something strange. In the last messages from each system before they went silent, there was always a mention of new visitors or unknown ships. But the descriptions were weird. The computer translation systems couldn't seem to understand what the aliens were trying to say about these visitors. "It's like their languages broke down when they tried to describe them," so he told Admiral Jiho. "The translation software kept giving error messages?" "What kind of error messages?" Jiho asked. "Unable to process concept, unknown linguistic structure, translation impossible. It's as if whatever they were seeing couldn't be put into words that made sense." Jiho felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of working with alien species, he had never seen translation software fail like this. The Federation's computers could translate thousands of different languages, including some that used colors or smells instead of sounds. What kind of beings could break language itself? As reports continued to come in from the outer regions, one thing became clear. Whatever was causing civilizations to vanish was getting closer to human space. They had maybe a few months before it reached the first human colonies. The galaxy that humans had helped to build, the peaceful community of different species working together, was being torn apart piece by piece. And humanity, the species that had always been there to help others, might soon need help themselves. But who could help them against an enemy that could make entire worlds disappear without a trace? Captain Wanho Seo had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought pirates, stopped wars, and protected innocent people across the galaxy. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw in the Centauran system. The emptiness was complete. Not just empty like a house with no furniture, but empty like the house had never been built at all. His science teams ran scan after scan, but they found nothing. No ruins, no graves, no trash, no sign that billions of people had once lived happy. "Lives here." "Captain," called out his communications officer, Yuna Huang. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. There are ships coming toward us." Wanho looked at the main screen. At first he saw nothing but stars. Then space itself seemed to bend and twist, and massive ships appeared out of nowhere. They were huge, easily 10 times bigger than his battlecruiser. But they looked wrong somehow, like they didn't quite fit in normal space. "Analysis?" Wanho asked his science officer. Lieutenant Mina Park stared at her instruments with confusion. "Sir, the computers can't get a proper reading on them. The ships seem to exist partially outside our normal space-time. It's like they're only half here." The alien ships moved closer. Wanho had never seen anything like them. They were dark and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange energy patterns flowed across their surfaces like living things. "Open a communication channel," Wanho ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something. Wanho's mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. The being on the screen was tall and seemed to be made of shadow and starlight. Its face kept changing, like looking at reflections in moving water. When it spoke, the translation computers made horrible screeching sounds and then went silent. Error messages filled the screens. But somehow, the meaning came through anyway, directly into their minds. "Your species has contaminated the galaxy with weakness," the being said. Its voice felt like ice in Wanho's brain. "You preserve the unworthy. You shelter the failed. You spread your disease of mercy and compassion. This ends now." "Who are you?" Wanho demanded. "What happened to the people who lived here?" "They were unworthy. We have corrected this error. Soon, all errors will be corrected." The communication ended. The alien ships began to move forward. Battle stations! Wanho shouted. His crew jumped into action. They had trained for this their whole lives. The Indomitable and the other human ships powered up their weapons and shields. Fire! Wanho commanded. Bright beams of energy shot out from his ships toward the aliens. The weapons were humanity's best, designed to punch through the toughest armor in the galaxy. But as the beams hit the alien ships, they simply passed through like the ships weren't really there. Direct hit, but no damage, reported his weapons officer with shock in his voice. The alien ships fired back. But their weapons weren't like anything humans had seen before. Instead of energy beams or missiles, they shot out waves of nothingness. Where the waves hit, human ships didn't explode. They just stopped being there. Wanho watched in horror as the destroyer Braveheart was hit by one of these waves. The ship didn't break apart or catch fire. It simply faded away like a bad dream. 1 second it was there with 300 crew members aboard, and the next second there was just empty space. What kind of weapons are those? Mina Park asked, her voice shaking. They're not weapons, Wanho realized with growing terror. They're erasing us, making us disappear like we never existed. More alien waves hit his fleet. Ship after ship vanished without a trace. The crews didn't even have time to scream. They were there one moment and gone the next, as if they had never been born. All ships, retreat, Wanho ordered. Fall back, to the jump point. But it was too late. The alien ships were too fast, and their erasing waves covered too much space. One by one, Wanho's proud fleet disappeared into nothingness. Lieutenant Kyung Nam was piloting a small scout ship at the edge of the battle. He watched everything happen through his ship's cameras, recording it all. When he saw that the battle was lost, he made the hardest decision of his life. Instead of trying to help his friends, he turned and ran. His little ship was fast and hard to see on sensors. While the aliens were busy erasing the larger ships, Kyung activated his hyperspace drive and jumped away. He was the only one to escape, but before he left, he saw something that would haunt him forever. The alien ships didn't just make the human fleet disappear. They did something to space itself. Where the ships had been, there were now holes. Empty spots in reality that hurt to look at. As Kyung's ship jumped into hyperspace, he sent an emergency message back to Earth. "This is Scout Ship Swift Arrow," he broadcast. "The fleet is gone. All of them. The enemy doesn't just kill, they erase. They make it so you never existed at all. The captain, the crew, everyone. It's like they were never born." His message would take weeks to reach Earth through the communication network. By the time it arrived, many more worlds would be silent. Back on Earth, Admiral Ji-ho Kim was in his office when the first reports started coming in. The communication networks were breaking down. Systems that had been reporting in regularly were suddenly missing their scheduled check-ins. Dr. So-hee Choi burst into his office without knocking. "Admiral, we have a problem. I've been tracking the pattern of silent systems and it's accelerating. Whatever is out there is moving faster now." She showed him her latest calculations. The rate of disappearing civilizations had doubled in just the past week. At this speed, the unknown force would reach the first human colony worlds in less than 2 months. "We need to warn everyone," Ji-ho said. "Send out evacuation orders to all outer colonies." "Evacuate to where?" So-hee asked. "We don't even know what we're running from." That night, Ji-ho couldn't sleep. He stood on his balcony looking up at the stars. Each point of light represented a sun, and many of those suns had planets full of life. But how many of those lights were already gone, erased by an enemy humanity didn't understand? Across the galaxy, other species were starting to panic. The ethereals, with their advanced sensors, had detected the wave of disappearing systems moving toward the galactic center. The granites, who lived on asteroids and could move their entire civilization if needed, began preparing their rock homes for a long journey to nowhere. But many species couldn't run. The Delphinians needed their special water to survive. The Vorthak were connected to their crystal caves by quantum bonds that couldn't be broken. The Centaurans, well, the Centaurans were already gone, along with their beautiful music. President Jiwon Kong called an emergency meeting of the Federation Council. Representatives from every member species gathered in the Great Hall on Earth. Many attended, by hologram, too scared to travel. "We are facing an unprecedented threat," President Kang announced. "An unknown force is systematically removing civilizations from the galaxy. We estimate it will reach human space within weeks. The alien representatives erupted in frightened chatter. Some demanded that humanity do something to stop this threat. Others wanted to know why the humans' mighty fleet couldn't protect them. "What can we do?" asked the Apex war chief, a 7-foot-tall warrior whose people had never lost a battle. "If your best ships cannot fight this enemy, what hope do the rest of us have?" Ji-Wan looked around the room at the faces of dozens of different species. These were her friends, allies who had worked with humanity for centuries to build a peaceful galaxy. Now they were all looking to her for answers she didn't have. "We do what humans always do," she said finally. "We don't give up. We find a way to fight back. And we protect each other until the end." But privately, she wondered if there would be enough time to find that way. The enemy was coming, and humanity had never faced anything like this before. In the outer colonies, people were starting to pack their belongings and look up at the sky with fear. Parents held their children close and told them everything would be okay. But everyone could feel it in the air. Something was coming. Something that could make entire worlds disappear like they had never existed at all. And humanity, the species that had always protected others, was about to face its greatest test. The colony world of New Sol was humanity's pride. 2 million people lived there in beautiful cities surrounded by green parks and crystal-clear rivers. Commander Yunbi Jiang had protected this world for 10 years, and she loved every street, every building, every family that called it home. But today, everything was about to change. "Commander, we have incoming ships," reported her sensor officer. "They just appeared out of nowhere, just like the report said they would." Yunbi looked at the main display and felt her blood turn cold. The ships were massive and wrong-looking, like they belonged in a nightmare instead of normal space. They hung in the sky above New Sol like dark clouds blocking out the sun. "All defense platforms, prepare to fire," Yunbi ordered. "All civilian areas begin immediate evacuation." New Sol's defenses were strong. They had energy shields that could stop asteroid impacts and weapons that could destroy enemy ships from thousands of miles away. The colonists had always felt safe knowing these defenses were there. But as the alien ships began to descend toward the planet, something terrible happened. Instead of firing weapons, the ships released small devices that fell toward the surface, like silver rain. When the devices hit the ground, they began to do something that hurt Yunbi's eyes to watch. Reality started to unravel. The first thing to go was the Central Park. It didn't burn or explode, it just stopped being there. One moment, children were playing on swings and families were having picnics. The next moment, there was nothing but empty space where the park used to be. "What's happening?" shouted her communications officer, Private Do Yun Cho. "The park is gone. But the people... Where are the people?" That was the horrifying part. The people weren't dead. They weren't injured. They simply weren't there anymore, like they had never existed. Yunbi tried to remember the families she had seen in the park just minutes before, but her memories were fading. Had there really been people there, or was she imagining it? The unmaking spread outward from each device. Buildings didn't collapse, they faded away layer by layer. The beautiful apartment complex where the Kim family lived became see-through, then transparent, then gone. Yunbi tried to remember the Kim family, but the memories slipped away like water. "Commander, our weapons aren't working," reported the weapons officer. "Every time we fire at their ships, the energy beams just pass right through them." Captain Do Yun Cho commanded the orbital defense fleet around New Sol. His ships were fast and well-armed, designed to protect the colony from any threat. But as he tried to fight the alien vessels, he discovered something that filled him with despair. His weapons were useless. Every missile, every energy beam, every weapon humanity had developed simply passed through the alien ships like they were made of smoke. But the aliens' unmaking devices were very real and very effective. "Sir, we're losing the Eastern District," reported his tactical officer. "The entire area is just gone, and I can barely remember what was there before." That was the cruelest part of the alien attack. They weren't just destroying things, they were removing them from history. The people who disappeared weren't just dead, they were erased so completely that even remembering them became impossible. Do-hyun watched helplessly as more and more of New Seoul faded away. The schools where children learned, the hospitals where doctors saved lives, the theaters where people gathered to watch plays, all of it vanishing like it had never been built. "All ships, fall back to the outer system," Do-hyun ordered. "We can't help them if we're erased too." As his fleet retreated, he took one last look at New Seoul. Half the planet was already gone, not destroyed but simply absent, and he could feel his own memories of the place becoming fuzzy and uncertain. Back on Earth, Admiral Ji-ho Kim was receiving reports from across human space. The pattern was always the same. The alien ships would arrive without warning, deploy their unmaking devices, and systematically erase everything they found. "How many colonies have we lost?" he asked Dr. So-hee Choi. "7 so far," she replied, but her voice was uncertain. "Or was it 6? I keep losing count because every time a place is erased, it becomes harder to remember it existed." This was the aliens' most terrifying weapon. They didn't just destroy their enemies, they removed them from reality so completely that even the memory of them faded away. Families forgot they had brothers and sisters. Parents couldn't remember their children. Entire histories were wiped clean. Dr. Min-seok Yoon had been studying the alien technology, trying to understand how it worked. "I think they're using some kind of quantum field manipulator," he told the emergency science team. "They're not just destroying matter. They're severing the quantum connections that tie events together across time." "Can we stop it?" asked President Ji-won Kang. "I don't know," Min-seok admitted. "This technology is beyond anything we've seen. It's like they can reach into the past and prevent things from ever happening in the first place." Across the galaxy, other species were falling to the same fate. The proud apex warriors tried to fight back with their advanced battle fleets, but their ships passed harmlessly through the alien vessels. The wise ethereals attempted to negotiate, but the aliens didn't respond to any form of communication, except that first terrible message. The granites tried to hide in deep space, moving their asteroid cities far from any star system. But the aliens found them anyway. One by one, the ancient rock beings simply stopped existing, along with their thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and culture. In the Terran Federation's emergency bunker deep beneath Earth's surface, humanity's leaders struggled to understand what they were facing. "They call themselves something," said Dr. So-hee Choi, "but our translation computers can't process the name. Every time we try to record what they call themselves, the data gets corrupted. So we'll call them the Unnamed," said Admiral Ji-ho. "What matters is stopping them." "But how do we fight an enemy we can't touch?" asked General So-young-im, the Federation's top military strategist. "Our weapons pass right through them. Our shields don't protect against their unmaking devices. It's like they exist partially outside our reality." President Kang looked around the room at humanity's brightest minds. These were the people who had solved every crisis humanity had faced for 3 centuries. They had ended wars, cured diseases, and brought peace to the galaxy. But now they all looked scared and confused. "There has to be a way," she said firmly. "There's always a way. We just have to find it." Outside the bunker, Earth continued its normal routine. People went to work. Children played in parks, families ate dinner together. Most of them didn't yet know that human colonies were disappearing, one by one. The government was trying to prevent panic, but word was starting to spread. Some people looked up at the night sky and wondered if the stars looked different than before. Were there fewer lights up there? It was hard to tell because the human mind kept adjusting, forgetting what had been erased. Lieutenant Kyung Nam, the sole survivor of Captain Won-ho's fleet, finally arrived back in human space. His ship was damaged and he was exhausted, but he carried the only first-hand account of how the aliens fought. "They don't exist in normal space-time," he reported to Admiral Ji-ho. "That's why our weapons can't touch them. They're like ghosts that can affect our world but can't be affected by it." "Did you learn anything else?" Ji-ho asked. Kyung hesitated. "There was something about the way they spoke. The computer translations failed, but I got the feeling they were afraid of something. Like they weren't doing this because they wanted to, but because they had to." "Afraid of what?" "I think they're afraid of us, of humans, of what we represent." This didn't make sense to anyone in the room. Humanity had always been the peacekeepers of the galaxy. They helped other species, protected the weak, and promoted cooperation and understanding. What could be frightening about that? But as reports continued to come in from the outer colonies, one thing became clear. The unnamed weren't just randomly destroying civilizations. They were specifically targeting worlds where humans had helped establish peace, where different species lived together in harmony, where the ideals of cooperation and compassion had taken root. They were erasing humanity's greatest achievements, the peaceful galaxy that humans had helped to build, and they were moving steadily toward Earth, the heart of it all. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in bunkers that had been built to survive nuclear wars and asteroid impacts, humanity's greatest minds worked frantically against time. The unnamed were only days away from reaching Earth itself. Dr. Min-seok. Yoon hadn't slept in 3 days. His eyes were red from staring at computer screens, and his hands shook as he drank his 20th cup of coffee. But he had finally made a breakthrough. "I think I understand how their erasing technology works," he told the emergency science team. "They're not just destroying things in the present. They're reaching back through time and severing the quantum connections that allow events to exist." Dr. Sohee Choi looked up from her own research. "That's impossible. You can't change the past." "They're not changing it," Min-seok explained. "They're disconnecting it. Every event in the universe is connected to every other event through quantum entanglement. If you cut those connections, the event stops being real. It becomes like something that might have happened in a dream." General Soo-young-im, who had been listening to the scientists argue for hours, slammed her hand on the table. "I don't care how it works. Can we stop it?" Min-seok was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe, but the cost would be terrible." He showed them his calculations on the main screen. The only way to protect something from being erased is to make it exist in multiple quantum states at the same time. If humanity could exist in all possible realities simultaneously, the unnamed couldn't erase us because they'd have to erase every possible version of reality. "What does that mean?" asked President Ji-won Kang. "It means we'd have to scatter our consciousness across infinite parallel dimensions. We'd still exist, but not as we do now. We'd be aware of all possibilities, but unable to fully experience any single one." The room fell silent. What Min-seok was describing sounded like a fate worse than death. To exist everywhere and nowhere, at the same time, to be aware of infinite versions of yourself, but never able to touch or feel or truly live in any of them. "There has to be another way," President Kang said. "I've been working on this for weeks," Min-seok replied. "This is the only solution I can find. We call it Project Persistence." Engineer Hyun-woo Lim had been building the device that would make Project Persistence possible. He called it the Quantum Resonance Network, and it was unlike anything humanity had ever constructed. The machine filled an entire underground chamber. It was made of crystalline structures that hummed with energy, connected by cables that seemed to bend space around them. Looking at it made people feel dizzy, as if their eyes couldn't quite focus on it properly. "Will it work?" Admiral Ji-ho Kim asked as he toured the facility. "In theory," Hyun-woo replied. "But we'll only get one chance to activate it. If we're wrong about how it works, humanity will be scattered across the quantum foam with no way to come back together." Above them, on the surface, the final preparations were being made. Colonel Seong-hwan Park was in charge of evacuating as many people as possible to the deep bunkers. But there wasn't room for everyone, and time was running out. "Sir, the outer sensor network is detecting massive ships approaching the solar system," reported his aide. "They'll be here in less than 6 hours." Seong-hwan looked around at the crowds of people waiting to get into the bunkers. Families holding hands, children crying, elderly people trying to comfort their grandchildren. These were the people he had sworn to protect, and he didn't have room to save them all. "Keep loading the bunkers," he ordered. "Every person we save is a victory." Dr. Ye-jin Moon was running the final tests on the Quantum Resonance Network. She had helped design the machine, and she would be the one to activate it when the time came. The responsibility weighed on her like a mountain. "All systems are functioning within normal parameters," she reported to the control room. "But I need to remind everyone that we don't really know what will happen when we turn this on." "We know what will happen if we don't turn it on, Admiral Law," Ji-ho replied grimly. "We'll be erased like every other civilization they've encountered." The first alien ships entered Earth's solar system like nightmares made real. They were even larger than the ones that had attacked the colonies, and their presence seemed to make space itself feel wrong. The planet's orbits shifted slightly, as if reality was becoming unstable just from having the unnamed nearby. Captain Do-Hyun Cho commanded humanity's last battle fleet. Every remaining ship had been gathered to defend Earth, but he knew it was hopeless. The weapons that couldn't touch the alien vessels at the colonies wouldn't work any better here. "All ships, this is Admiral Ji-Ho Kim," came the voice over the communication system. "You are not expected to win this battle. You are only expected to buy us time. Every minute you can delay them is another minute for Project Persistence to be completed." Do-Hyun looked around the bridge of his ship at his young crew. They were scared but determined. They knew they were probably going to die, but they also knew that their sacrifice might save everyone else. "You heard the Admiral," Do-Hyun said. "We're not here to win. We're here to give humanity a chance. All ships, attack formation." The human fleet charged toward the alien vessels, knowing their weapons would be useless, but hoping to at least distract the enemy. It was the bravest and most hopeless battle in human history. As expected, the human weapons passed harmlessly through the alien ships. But something unexpected happened. The aliens actually slowed down to deal with the attacking fleet. It was as if they found the human ships annoying, like mosquitoes buzzing around their heads. "They're responding to us," Do-Hyun reported with surprise. "They can't be hurt by our weapons, but they seem irritated by the attacks." This gave the scientists precious extra minutes to complete their preparations. In the deep bunker, Dr. Yejin Moon made the final adjustments to the quantum resonance network. Around her, millions of people waited in silence. Some prayed, some held their loved ones, some just stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about what was coming. "Network is ready for activation," she announced. "But I need to warn everyone, one more time. When I turn this on, we won't be human in the same way anymore. We'll be something new, something that exists across multiple realities. Do it," President Kang ordered. "It's better than not existing at all." On the surface, the alien ships had reached Earth's atmosphere. Their unmaking devices began to fall like deadly snow, and wherever they touched, pieces of the world simply stopped being there. The Eiffel Tower faded away as if it had never been built. The Great Wall of China became transparent, and then vanished completely. Entire cities were erased from existence, along with all the people who had lived there. But humanity's greatest achievements weren't just buildings or monuments. They were the connections between people, the love and hope and determination that had driven them to spread across the stars and help other species find peace. And those connections, those quantum entanglements between hearts and minds, were about to become something the unnamed had never encountered before. "Activating Quantum Resonance Network," Dr. Yejin Moon announced. "In 3, 2, 1, she pressed the button that would either save humanity or scatter them across infinite dimensions forever. The world exploded into light and possibility and became something entirely new. Reality shattered like a broken mirror, and Admiral Ji-Ho Kim found himself existing in 1,000 different places at once. He was still in the bunker beneath Earth, watching Dr. Yejin Moon activate the Quantum Resonance Network. But he was also on his flagship in space, and in his childhood home, and in places that had never existed but could have existed if history had been different. All of these realities were equally real and equally him. The Quantum Resonance Network had worked, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of just scattering humanity across parallel dimensions, it had awakened something that had always been there but hidden. Every choice that had ever been made, every path that could have been taken, every possibility that had ever existed, suddenly, all of them became real at the same time. Dr. So-hee Choi found herself in a laboratory that existed in countless versions. In one reality, she was young and just starting her career. In another, she was old and wise, having studied aliens for 100 years. In yet another, she had never become a scientist at all, but was a teacher helping children learn about the stars. But in all realities, she understood what was happening. The unnamed had made a terrible mistake. You cannot erase something that exists everywhere at once. The alien ships stopped their attack on Earth. For the first time since they had begun their campaign of erasure, they seemed confused. Their unmaking Devices, which had worked perfectly on every other civilization, simply had nothing to grab onto. How do you erase a species that exists in infinite variations across infinite realities? The unnamed tried to communicate, but their words came out broken and strange. This is impossible. You should not. How do you exist in all states simultaneously? President Jiwan Kang, existing in countless versions of herself across infinite realities, finally understood what humanity was facing. In one reality, she was a diplomat trying to make peace. In another, she was a warrior leading the final battle. In all of them, she saw the truth about the unnamed. They weren't evil. They were terrified. "Show us your true form," she called out, across the quantum dimensions. "Let us understand why you fear us so much." Reality rippled, and suddenly everyone could see the unnamed as they really were. They had once been beautiful, tall, graceful beings made of crystalline energy and starlight. But they were dying. Their entire species was slowly fading away, and they had been trying to stop it for millions of years. In their reality, compassion was a disease. Caring for others weakened them. Love made them vulnerable. They had built their civilization on strength, on the survival of only the fittest, on leaving the weak behind to die. And it had been working. For millions of years, they had grown stronger and more powerful by abandoning anyone who showed mercy or kindness. But then they had discovered humanity. Humans who risked their lives to save other species. Humans who shared their technology with weaker civilizations. Humans who believed that everyone deserved help, that no one should be left behind. And wherever humans went, other species began to copy them. The galaxy was becoming infected with humanity's ideas about compassion and cooperation. The unnamed could feel it spreading like a virus, making all the species in the galaxy weaker and more vulnerable, but also happier, more connected, more alive. This was what the unnamed feared most, not that humanity would destroy them, but that humanity would change them. That they would start to feel compassion and love, which they believed would make them weak enough to finally die. Dr. Min Seok Yoon, existing across infinite realities where he had made different choices and discovered different truths, finally understood the real nature of what they were fighting. "They're not trying to destroy us," he said to all versions of himself and everyone else. "They're trying to destroy the idea of us. They're afraid that if compassion spreads far enough, their own people will start to care about others instead of just themselves." The unnamed heard this, and their panic grew stronger. "Yes!" they screamed across dimensions. "Your disease of caring is killing us. Every species you touch becomes weaker, more vulnerable, more willing to sacrifice for others. This cannot be allowed!" But something had already started to happen to them. By existing in the same quantum space as humanity, by being forced to understand how humans thought and felt, the unnamed were beginning to experience emotions they had spent millions of years trying to suppress. One of the unnamed, a being who might have been their leader, suddenly stopped trying to erase humanity and instead asked a question no member of their species had asked in eons. "Are you in pain?" The question was directed at humanity, scattered across infinite realities and fighting for their very existence. And the honest answer was yes. The humans were in terrible pain, existing everywhere and nowhere at once, aware of all possibilities but unable to fully live in any of them. And for the first time in millions of years, an unnamed felt sorry for someone else. The feeling hit the alien like a physical blow. Compassion, empathy, the desire to help someone who was suffering. These emotions crashed through their crystalline form like a tsunami. Other unnamed began to feel it too. The quantum resonance that allowed humanity to exist in multiple realities was also allowing emotions to flow between the two species. The aliens were being infected with the very thing they had tried to prevent, the ability to care about others. "Make it stop!" screamed the unnamed leader. "We cannot feel this! It will destroy us!" But it was too late. Once compassion enters a heart, it cannot be removed. Once a being learns to care about others, they cannot go back to caring only about themselves. Dr. Sohee Choi, in her infinite wisdom across infinite realities, made a choice that only a human could make. Instead of fighting back, instead of trying to protect humanity from their attackers, She did something that no unnamed had ever experienced. She forgave them. "We understand why you were afraid," she said gently, "but you don't have to be afraid anymore. Caring about others doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger because you're no longer fighting alone." The paradox of this statement broke something fundamental in the unnamed's reality. They were a species that had survived by being strong and ruthless, but they had also been slowly dying, becoming more and more isolated and empty inside. Humanity offered them something they had never considered, the strength that comes from connection, from having others who will help you when you fall, from knowing that you don't have to face the universe alone. But this gift came with a price. To accept it, they would have to give up everything they thought they knew about survival and strength. The unnamed faced the hardest choice any species had ever faced: remain strong and alone and slowly fade away, or become vulnerable and connected and truly live. Many of them couldn't handle the choice. The contradiction between their million-year-old beliefs and these new feelings of compassion tore them apart. They didn't die in any way that could be seen or measured. They simply chose to stop existing, to fade away from reality rather than face the terrifying possibility of caring about others. But some of them, the bravest ones, made a different choice. They chose to learn what it meant to be human. Admiral Jiho Kim, watching this happen across infinite realities, realized that humanity had won the most impossible victory in history. They had defeated an enemy not by destroying them, but by teaching them to love. The galaxy began to heal. Worlds that had been erased started to flicker back into existence as the surviving unnamed used their reality-shaping technology to undo some of the damage they had caused. Not all of it could be fixed. Some civilizations were gone forever, but many others returned, confused but alive. The unnamed, who had chosen to embrace compassion, became something new. They were no longer the cold, crystalline beings who had tried to erase weakness from the universe. They became warm, caring creatures who used their incredible powers to help others instead of destroying them. Humanity slowly learned to exist in normal reality again, though they were forever changed. By their experience of living in infinite dimensions, they had learned what it truly meant to be connected to all life in the universe. And in the end, the galaxy became what humanity had always dreamed it could be: a place where different species helped each other, where no one was left behind, where strength came not from standing alone but from standing together. The name of the species that had once been called the unnamed was forgotten by choice. They didn't want to be remembered for what they had been when they were afraid. Instead, they chose to be known for what they became when they learned to love. And sometimes, on quiet nights when people looked up at the stars, they could hear something beautiful drifting through space. The sound of former enemies singing together, their voices joined in harmony across the vast distances between worlds. It was the song of a galaxy that had learned the most important lesson in the universe: that caring for others is not a weakness to be cured, but a strength to be celebrated.